Yeah, and I completely agree. And speaking of blood and whatnot, because this is something that's going to become more important, even though with comic book movies having that R rating now and everything, like we're going to see a lot more of this. But yeah, question of the night.
Question of the night. And it was
Anthony, you
funny
read this
too,
one.
because this actually spawned from the whole discussion we was talking about Logan, because they was talking about like that movie didn't need to have blood or anything like that. And it just got me thinking. And pretty much the question I asked, do you think CGI blood can be better than makeup blood in some cases? Or do you think practical effects with stuff like gore, blood, and bruises will always be better? So it's just like, I guess, because we always say this, like especially film aficionados, cinemaphiles, they always say practical effects are better. But can y'all think of some cases, and maybe even bring up some movie examples where CGI blood can actually be more effective?
The one purpose, and I don't want you guys to jump on me when I say this, the one situation where I can see it being used okay is actually in Batman versus Superman. The scene where Batman is fighting the dudes in the warehouse, and like he flings a crate over his shoulder. He hits a guy in the head, and his head bangs against the wall. Now in the PG-13 version, it's cool. Like he just his head hits the wall. He's fine. He slides to the ground. In the R-rated version, his head hits that wall and explodes, and the blood just slides down like while he slides down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh fuck, this is what he added in this R-rated like edit bay room. This is the one touch that he had to bring in, and it kind of like watching that. It kind of made me think like, well, the CGI it does work, but it also makes you realize without that CGI, you think they're knocked out. With that CGI, they're fucked up. And in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
The main thing here, though, man, is like, I mean, look at this shit. It's Batman and the Superman. It's like, I wasn't expecting any kind of blood. I mean, I can understand a couple of cuss words or a couple of whatever. Like, that's what I was expecting with the whole R-rated version.
Yeah.
I was not expecting blood at all.
You
So,
weren't
seeing
expecting blood, man. They were basing their marketing around this one line where he says, "Do you bleed? You will." Like,
like,
I
not
think
in
that
the
would have
sense
been a
of,
cool
like-
visual. Have him bleed from his mouth for like a second. Like that
But
would
that wouldn't have been an R
something.
rating. You could have easily just done it in the movie.
I've
And
seen
it
that
probably
in
would have
PG
been better.
movies.
That is interesting to me because y'all having the exact same discussion y'all had with Logan, and I actually want to start with you, Alan. But you had y'all was debating about the fact that in Logan's, minor spoiler here, but like the little girl actually cuts herself, and y'all was debating that the rating could have been changed based on that because you was just like, oh, it's CG blood, so it doesn't really matter. But if it was like makeup blood, then it would matter.
No, that
My
wouldn't matter
issue
at all.
Is not the context of what was happening with the blood. Like that movie, like has a lot of practical effects and practical blood. That scene alone, let's say this movie was PG-13, and that scene alone, her cutting herself would not have warranted it. Not because of the kind of blood, but because of how long they showed it. It was a split second of her just kind of cutting her wrist, and it's like boom, 1 second you would have missed it. But
No,
there
it
are other
wasn't
scenes
1
where
second.
it was not that long. Where
It
oh
was
man,
longer
this
than
needs to be
that.
R
She
rating.
cut herself multiple times. So
Those- well, they could have just done it once, and you could have kept the rating. But there's a situation where she's cutting dudes' heads off, where obviously it has to be R rating. But even to answer the question, I think that it really depends on why the blood is there. My issue is that unless you're making a horror movie, you don't need blood in a movie. Like that is just something that is added on just to make people like uncomfortable. Like in a horror movie, you're supposed to be afraid. Jason cuts you. You're supposed to be, oh man, that must hurt because this person's bleeding all over the place. But outside of that, you don't need it. The only place I could think CG blood would be better is it's super stylized, like 300, for instance. The second one where it's so stylized and you have all that CG blood to make it feel like a comic book.
Yeah, true.
I mean, like for me, because I'm not a big, comic book movie fan or whatever. So it's like for me, the blood was necessary. I don't give a shit if CGI or not CGI, but that blood in Logan is necessary because I've been saying that shit for every other X-Men movie. Like, how the fuck does he have those knives? And I'm supposed to think that he's dangerous, and yet I never see any blood when he stabs people or slices people's faces or whatever. That's some bullshit. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, like I
Like,
fucking hated that shit.
blood needs to be there for like the level of realism you're trying to achieve, and it can be used in different ways. Like there's certain movies that are amazing that could have used blood but didn't. A great example is like The Dark Knight. People get shot, but there's no real blood in it, and that's fine. But something, like in, let me think of a good example of when they use blood. Black Swan. There's a part where like she gets like her skin dries up near like the edges, and at one point she peels it back too far and she starts to bleed. And like, I don't know, there's something about the way she gasps and tries to cover herself up. It's like it made it feel more heavy than like if she would have just like, nicked herself without it bleeding. I don't think it would have had as much of an impact. But just to get my piece out of the way, CG Blood is garbage and should always be considered garbage. You always want to do practical effects. The best example that I love to think of that is 100% practical is, has anyone seen the movie Daybreakers?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
The entire movie, when they're trying to experiment on the guy and give him the new blood, he's like, "Hey, I think I feel pretty good," and then they show it from the outside of the room, and then just practical blood goes everywhere. Like that CG blood would have looked like garbage and would have ruined the shot.
One of the place to use CGI blood though that actually makes a lot of sense is when you're dealing with like proper fantasy settings, not necessarily sci-fi, but like proper fantasy settings, because you have you have humans usually, of course, but you always have these other creatures that are also going to bleed. And I'm sorry, but practical blue-colored blood and green-colored blood like we used to use in older movies just doesn't look good. Either it's way too neon-y, or it's entirely too flat, and it doesn't look like real blood. Whereas with CGI blood in those situations, it would look better. Like I'm not saying like Lord of the Rings. I'm not talking about like Lord of the Rings. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like Evil Dead 2, it works because those are demons, and so you've got that kind of weird looking blood that works for them. But if you go into the fantasy settings, not the horror settings, and do the same thing, it just doesn't look right. Like I've seen way too many neon green bloods coming out of creatures, or for some reason blue, like bright blue blood coming out of creatures, or that silver blood that comes out of the unicorn in Harry Potter. Like that. Oh yeah. Like all the times that they try to do practical blood with fantasy creatures, it doesn't come off right. Whereas I think
they are fantasy creatures. So
I think the one movie that kind of played it like neon, like brightly colored blood to its strength was actually Attack of the Block, because those aliens where they were fighting, they were like bright neon blue blood.
Because y'all bring up a good point too, like it's actually based on the aesthetic of the movie and actually the genre of the movie too. Because like when I was like having this discussion about Blood, I immediately thought about Sin City, because a lot of that was CGI, right?
Yeah, probably all of it.
Yeah, like all of that was CGI. I don't think why would you use practical effects in a movie like that? It just wouldn't.
There
make
were
sense.
practical.
Anthony, that actually
There's a
goes to
lot of
great
practical
point
blood
I
in there
had.
too.
Yeah, Justin, what you're saying?
Well, actually, because Anthony, that's exactly the point I was trying to make in the chat. CG blood only works if it fits the aesthetic of having other things that are CGI around it. You know what I mean? Like with Sin City, the only practical things are the people and some of the props. Like they stylize it so hard with CG effects that it's okay the blood looks fake because everything else around it is fake and hyper stylized. But if you have an instance like, say, one that stands in my mind as Bad Blood, not the song, of course. But, it's the remake of Fight Night. Anytime they shoot Colin Farrell and he bleeds, it's CG blood and it looks awful. So, and that's the thing, is that that's the only CG part in that shot, and that's why it makes it look even worse. So yeah, you have to have that balance psychologically of fake objects in the scene to make the CG blood look more natural.
And to add on to that, this is a perfect example. You could pause it there, Nick. That's real fucking blood he's about to spit in this guy's face. And that's a combination of CG and practical. And Guillermo del Toro's taught us that's the best way to do it. That's CG, but there's also some practical there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, and I was going to bring up, and I know I bring this up a lot, but here's another thing. This is a zombie show, but Walking Dead, brother, like, you see this shit, and it's fake blood. I missed the part where, like, he shot in the head. But yeah, like, fake as well. All that shit's fake. And it's like, dude, honestly, I don't need you to spend all that extra money to get this point across. Like, oh, zombie head exploded. It's like, this is for story. This isn't for, like, the fucking weirdos at home jerking off. Like, oh, yeah, dude, gore. Fuck yeah, man.
But then if you do that, people will look at the show and call it out. It was like, okay, he just took a headshot. Where's the blood? There's supposed to be blood there.
Exactly.
He sliced his stomach open. Where's the blood? This isn't real. This show that I'm watching about zombies isn't real.
Exactly. No, and that's the thing that always frustrates me. Like, like the show, it's not a horror show, but you know what I mean? It's just like the fake blood can be on anything. It doesn't matter. Like the story should make the blood better. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Whatever the situation's for. I mean, it's
I'm actually curious too. Just one last question before we move on here. But what do you guys actually think is most expensive to actually do? Like to actually get like a lot of practical blood, or will you think it'd be cheaper to actually just do it in CGI?
CG would be cheaper.
It's actually not that expensive to get fake blood, like proper prosthetic blood. You know, if you find the right store or the right combination, it's not that hard. I mean, CG blood is cheap only for time for the most part. That's the cheaper thing about it.
Well, that and also getting the right shot, because when you have liquids going around, getting the right. I know it's because that weird, but getting the right splash or getting the right context might look weird. But with CG, it can be easy. That's why it's used more often than practical.
And then that goes into the chances of it looking fake, right?
No, because that's what I was thinking too. Like budgetary, like this Nick, because you brought up The Walking Dead, and maybe because a TV show doesn't have the big budget as some movies do. So like, we don't have enough money to get practical effects, so they probably would use CGI to make it look practical.
There's a lot of
and it's also
on that show though.
No, you're right, but I mean, as always, it depends on the situation. Because like even Dawn of the Dead, which is a very CGI heavy show or movie, the remake 2004. Zack Snyder did it. No, I'm sorry, Julian. No, but that movie though, there's a lot of CGI, but at the same time, they have these little pockets in the back of their heads, and it explodes. Someone's controlling it with the fucking remote. So like when someone sends off a fake gun, like pow, that shit explodes. But the thing is, it gets on the clothes, it gets in the background, it gets on the fucking whatever, and it's like if that dude doesn't do it right, if he's not professional, you gotta do that shit again.
I mean, I actually have experience with this. Like when we shot Monkey with a Gun, there's like one scene where there is a headshot, and it does take a lot of setup and a lot of patience. But like, you can't fake the light bouncing off of the liquid flying through the air.
Yeah.
Like you can do the CG blood and it can look nice, but you cannot fake that moment and that look at the blood sinking into the material, and shit like that. So like I think that blood, if you're depending on how much you're using, you still always want to consider going practical. Like, look at the Evil Dead remake. Like that, there's CG blood in that movie, but that chick was covered head to toe in actual fake blood.
But I'm just laughing at the people fucking chat talking about like, what if the MCA was a pyramid scheme? That would be like ruthless in the chat and shit like that. All you got to do is just recommend 3 friends, and then you got to recommend those 3 friends to attack the chat as well, and then those 3 friends. Like that would be fucking hilarious.
Isn't that exactly how YouTube works? You're always supposed to tell your friends about shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, dude, we just found out right now that YouTube is a pyramid scheme. Everybody, like, holy shit.
Stop the press. Man. Mind blown. YouTube is a pyramid scheme.